Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to PCM23. This is Lions episode number 21. We're at the start of our new season, and we have hit the repeat button. Our sponsor objectives are identical except one for the coming season. Our team is identical except for one replaced rider and a few guys coming in who only one steps into the upper end of the squad. So we really have the same team and the same approach for the coming year. The difference is how much development is there into the team that'll make us better. Now, of course, majority of the top end guys that we had, at least prior to the beginning of last season, were the old guard who weren't improving, meaning they are the same quality now as they were a year ago. There are some young riders that did add to that group and are there near the top now. A year on, we should expect them to eclipse the old guard at some stage. But for now, that hasn't happened. The disappointing part for me on the sponsor objectives that's going to make it potentially challenging, as we were so close to a super success last year, is that our top 5 objectives are all stage win objectives. All of our 3-star objectives, though one of those is after the cutoff date, so it's really the top 4. Regardless, stage wins. Not easy to pull off, though. We certainly did pull off some of them. Budget sits at 74K right now. Partial success would get us another 7,000. We'd make it 15 if we can hit that super success this year. That 89K would come in very handy, as we very much ran into budget constraints for this year. We've got almost $1 million in the bank. That's not the problem. The staff is not the problem, and we have made improvements to the staff. And with improvements to the staff, development should be a bit faster for our young, high potential riders, and therefore we should expect this season to not just see them approach our best riders, but certainly get beyond them. Joining our top 7, joining the top 6, making it a top 7, 3.5-star group, which is getting quite large. Somebody has got to break into that 4-star range soon. New man Kareem is the one who joins that group, but he's not much. He's a quality domestique. His 74 flat rating is far better than anybody else on the squad. He is plus 3 points better than everyone else. He's about plus 7 or 8 points better than nearly the entire team. It's going to be very helpful. His time trialing eventually will be pretty helpful, but this is just a powerful domestique for us. He really actually didn't even get any of our key sponsor objectives, as I've already gone through and sorted that one out for the season. No commentary for the coming section, just very quickly, a few seconds of each. I'm going to go through each rider on the team to show you their web. This is the area you probably should be keeping the eye on the most as we do this. Of course, you can pause as you go through, look at the attributes themselves, look at the capacities themselves. But I think the web is the clearest, easy picture that you can get a couple seconds at a time. What stood out to me as we went through there was a Shimway and was it Mulebron? No, Samuels. You can see Samuels has made some really good progress, and then a Shimway. You can see how they're both filling out fairly well and definitely still have that growth potential that some others don't. I think those are 2 key riders to watch out for this season. Shinwei with 1 career victory right now. Samuels likewise with just a single career victory. I expect them to play a much bigger role this season. Kudos was like our big guy a year ago, but Kudos is 31, not likely to get much more development, though he certainly still has potential. He has not hit all of his levels, but at 31, he's going to probably degrade as fast as he's able to level up at this phase. He's getting some results. He's got 6 victories. He was our key guy this last year, but it's 73, 73, 72, and nothing else to go with it. It won't take much for these guys to go beyond him and be the ones that we rely on key races throughout the season. One change to my staff, I have added a second groundbreaking trainer, and that's now giving us 2 base level, minimum level. Finances aren't fantastic at this point. I'm not going to dump crazy money when we are only continental to force us to get higher. You have to be realistic about how we approach this, especially as I did have to go in and edit a handful of trainers to even have the possibility to have them. We're not going to just throw them right in. But you can see Samuels is seen as one of the high potential guys. And then we also have Nambahu, Umorera, and Johannes Dalek. Being that I am down to 2 modern guys and 3 traditional guys that are getting pretty old, I think most likely I will allow Shane to have their contract expire this year, and anyone remaining that's traditional will just have to fold into what's going on with modern, as they're not going to progress anyway. Traditional ones are the guys that are either at their 20 levels or at level 18 or something like that, career winding down, they're in their 30s, they're going to go backwards anyway. So having the wrong trainer isn't going to hurt them much. That progression to offset the degrade not make much of a difference. We're not going to have too many more 30-year-olds on this roster. In fact, we're not going to be signing anymore at all. We're definitely committed to the young movement and progression that provides. But let's go ahead and get into the season. The only change that we had on the sponsor objectives was, instead of Castilla-Leon, the last one that we had right before the deadline, that has been replaced this year with the Österreich tour, the Austria tour. That is a little bit earlier in July, but otherwise has the same format, same level. A couple of the objectives moved up half a star or down half a star, but otherwise it's literally the same set. Our sponsor is seeking the same things. And as the team improves, our chance of the super success improves with it. We were so close last year, but the downside is that we started with a popular Gibbons a year ago. Now that he's been with the team for 2 years and is entering a 3rd year and is in his 30s, he's no longer an up-and-comer. He is a has-been to an extent, and as a result, his popularity has disappeared. He's been overtaken by Mollebron as our most popular rider, and you can see that Mollebron does not fit the profile or the needs, which means our registered riders is going to be quite low. Our squad rating is going to be quite low. Samuels is actually now our most popular rider in South Africa. And again, he is not where it needs to be either. So these 2 evaluations are going to end up being quite low. Last season, our results page, we had plus, up and down. We had so many successes, and yet we could not overcome these last 2 factors with the number of successes that we had. The noteworthy results helped but didn't overcome. So we're going to have to be even better to overcome it. We're going to have to be even better to somehow boost the popularity, which means the 2 pro races that we have, Oman and Slovenia in particular, as those are key sponsor objectives, and both 2 pro level races are going to be key for us, because we need a bit of a boost to the popularity of at least a rider, especially a South African rider, to help with the sponsor confidence, as we've been struggling to get that step above. I think we will be comfortably success range. We should see that increase of 7,000, but hitting that super success will remain a rather daunting task, at least for one more season. As we go to hit Continental Pro, it might actually even be worse. Also, at a rather disappointing fashion after a 6th place finish in the standings. There is nothing guaranteed about boosting training structure. Position alone doesn't do it. There is, from what I understand, from what I've heard, and it makes sense based on results that we just encountered, a nation with a training structure of 4, having a rider finish 6th in the rankings should be an automatic to see that training structure hit a 5. That is more than enough. Probably top 50 or top 30 would be enough. Certainly top 25 would do it. Top 10, absolutely, 100% without a doubt, would be enough. But then to not see Eritrea get a boost in training structure, from what I'm understanding about how this system works, is any nation that qualifies, any individual rider that falls above whatever cutoff point there is for a nation, right? Training structure 1 is the lowest threshold. Training structure 9, winning is a possibility. I think what ends up happening is every single nation that checks off the box is going to go into a random draw, and within that random draw there's odds, like playing the lottery essentially. I think if you are a training structure 1 and you meet the threshold, I would assume that the odds are strongly in your favor. Like, you've got a 75% chance. I don't know the number. I'm just throwing out an example here. But let's say you have a 75% chance as a training structure 1 nation when you had a rider reach the top 100. Example. Just an example. I'm spitballing here. But training structure 4, like Eritrea, right? Top 25 is the checkbox. Okay, fine. Gamai has checked that box. He's there, he's in the pool, but training structure 4 is decent. He's got a 50-50 shot of having done enough for the nation to see the boost. The game trigger for January 1st, it rolls that dice, it plays those odds. Not one nation in the entire world had a successful draw. Maybe the odds are much lower than 50%. Maybe it's 35. It's going to take him, say, 3 years to see another plus. Maybe the odds were at 40% when it was one level lower, and we had a good draw in that first year. Awesome. He checked that box that first year. He was in that top 50 or whatever he needed to be. But this time, the odds were not in our favor. We lost that lottery. We have to wait another year. Just as last year, Marseille is our first objective of the year, and the objective, like last year, is to get into the top 10. Problem here is that we have riders with 80 plus hills ratings in the field, where the best we could muster is a 73. We are astronomically behind in terms of quality compared to the best riders in the field. The fortunate thing is that does drop off after the top 6 or so riders. So there is a chance to squeeze into the top 10 following those guys who are just elite compared to everybody else. Also, one of the ways that we have a chance is that you're looking at a scenario as one of the front riders has fallen. Will he get back in contact? They got a 3-minute advantage. He's certainly chasing. He's got a chance of getting back up here. We're at 80k to go, and the race is just about to get interesting with this race's biggest climb. It's a one-day race, so this is not continuing on. There's no stage race. One chance, top 10, got to make it happen. Just in case we put somebody in the break, it's Molebron. Not much of a sprinter, but he's got a little bit of capability in the sprint if it comes down to it, but it's more so about if the break survives, there's 8 riders. He's going to have a top 10. The worst he could finish is 8th place. He's bound to not be the worst one here, so probably could score a top 5. And with a little sprint capability, he could maybe get a podium or better if we get it just right. But as they go over the top of the biggest climb, We've got 66k to go. Let's pause for, or slow it down anyway for a second, and get somebody to fetch some water bottles. And then we will get LeBron. So as we go under 60k to go, LeBron's group now at 240. Certainly still have a chance with 60k. It's a pretty short race here, and 8 riders can be rather difficult to chase. But in LeBron's case, I'm not going to overly commit to it. I'd still rather see him help the team if the group so happens to stay away. In that case, then we'll go for it. But also, if it does happen to stay away, by conserving some energy, he'll have that much more to give at the end to beat some of the other guys and place particularly high. We've had a crash which split the field temporarily. It's only 25 seconds. I have a feeling that they will be just behind. Yeah, here they come. Contact has been made. Okay, time to increase the effort. 53k to go. For the most part, I am riding to protect our sprinters, assuming that it will come down to a sprint at the end. And I think that's going to help our chances, as the profile as a punchy stage is going to set up a lot of teams for their punchers to go for it late to attack. If we can neutralize that and hang with them, we'll be set up for our sprinters, and they won't be thinking about their sprinters. That gives us a better chance to score that top 10. 82 is now starting to be a point where it's not quite enough effort, is it? Let's go ahead and roll it up just a little bit more. 83. Make sure we're not drifting back too far. Yeah, we're fine. In terms of the climbing, we're getting really down to it here. The last little bit is coming up. Not much more climbing to be done with 45k to go. I'd say Mifsud might be about the biggest name of the group here. Still 220. They've only lost about 15 seconds in the last 15k. LeBron at this point starting to commit a little bit more to the concept, to the idea of these guys staying away. It's back out to 240 for the time being. Okay, key moment of the race is definitely going to be this climb. For my sprint strategy, it's important that those guys stay up here. For LeBron, it's important that he commits and stays part of that and doesn't run out of energy. See, Arafane is struggling a little bit. He's going to have to push a little harder. Villiers is going to have to push a little harder. Gibbons, the sprinters having to give a little bit more to hang in there through this climb. And Molebron's still committed, still have the full group. And yes, that hurt Molebron a little bit, but not much. He's looking pretty good. And their gap is still looking pretty good. 230. It's come down, what, 5 seconds from where it was 20k ago. They have a chance. They have a definite chance. We will sprint train here at some stage. However, it's a weird thing because you don't want to be chasing down your teammates. So we want to be set up for the late stage, but we at the same time we want to give him a chance. All right, everyone's at the front in position. Everyone has enough energy to contribute. 20k to go. At this point, I would be nervous about the breakaway hanging on. It is down to a minute 40, so that gap is coming down faster now. The effort level of this group is also increasing. It's definitely a couple points higher than it was, so they are working harder to now stay away. As we begin the final climb of the race, minute 30. Here is that moment where the action is beginning at 17k out. This is where we want to not lead. We don't want to lead. We don't want to chase our teammate. But as these guys try to attack, the favorites, Mark Hershey in particular as one of them, we don't want to get left behind and then have those guys end up catching Molebron on their own, and him getting 11th or 12th place because 7 riders caught them and passed them and beat them, and he finished 4th out of the 8, and the rest of my guys are left behind. That's not the scenario we are looking for. Arafane is actually probably our strongest today because of his +5, so we'll put him ahead of Gibbons. And then De Villiers, and we actually have a proper sprint team today. We have Kudos on a +5, which is awesome. And then I think Samuels is a little bit stronger than Zerai, though Zerai is a better puncher. This is actually a good time for him to carry on with that. We'll have to do a little bit back and forth here with Molebron. Now, with this lead out, that's going to help protect our sprinters, as you are seeing the attack, the push. But again, I don't want to be chasing 2 riders going away is not bad. So we want to be just behind the front runners. Some of these guys trying to attack. Meanwhile, this group, 13K to go. Molebron hanging on. Villiers, Gibbons feeling it. Arafane totally fine through there. Zerai out of red bar, could be a 99. Still got to chase those 2 back. We did kind of get to the front there for a moment, but it's okay. Somebody else came forward and overtook us, and now we're about to go over the top. We're still over a minute gap for Molebron. Checking in here. Now guys are not wanting to contribute. Getting some recovery in. That's right, you can back off a little bit. Okay, it's 8.4K. We do not want all of these guys at the front. Samuels is going to drop behind. Too many riders ahead of our sprint. 5.6K. Gel for Molebron. They've got a shot here. Okay, now we can go back. Increase that effort again. That's right, bring us forward. And those 2 have been caught, and the peloton's down to 41 riders. Okay, on to Kudos. 3.4. It's also territory to gel up for everyone. These are the complicated kind of races. When you're playing single player, it's easy to sit back and pause and micromanage and do what you got to do. When you're here, it's rather difficult. 36 seconds ahead. These guys have they're going to make it. They are going to make it. We're going to get our top 10 with Molebron. I think now is a good time to 2.1K. Kudos is going to sprint. He's not a sprinter. He's got some acceleration though, but no top speed. 1.4K. Yeah, see, that's why we moved Samuels out of the way. But speaking of, 600 meters. Molebron, sprint. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. That's a podium. That's a podium. We got a podium. Yes, Molebron takes 2nd. Maybe if I'm not stuck micromanaging, and yeah, I've got De Villiers. All kinds of confusion going on there, but De Villiers actually cracks the top 10 as well. Breakaway hangs on, and we get on the podium. Looks like I could have gone a little earlier with Molebron. Maybe has a chance to win that though. But here's the thing: bottom line, top 10 was expectation. Anything top 5 becomes a super success. We've got a podium. That is a super success for this objective, this 2.5-star objective. So it's a great start to our season. We had a great start last year, though, and could not capitalize. Let's see if we can keep that going. I'm not 100% sure whether it was Roteasir or Johannes Talek. I think it was Johannes Talek, but one of the 2 of them has leveled up here in the month of January, making it 8 riders now at the 3.5-star range. Johannes Dalek. If it is him, it's his time trial that has really boosted, but his medium mountain at a 70 with plenty more potential. What am I training him as? Stage racer? Yes. So it's looking kind of like it might have been, because that mountain rating, the medium mountain in particular, has certainly gone up, and that time trialing has taken what looks like a pretty healthy jump. So I do believe that it's Johannes Dalek anyway, and at 20. New trainers, already seeing some progress, but of course it's not like I haven't seen guys progress before. It's just it was a little less frequent than what I'm used to. 78 downhill rating, by the way. Johannes Dalek, fantastic going downhill. To wrap this episode up, I'm going to go over what my procedure was for setting my team up for the year to come, for those sponsor objectives in particular. Just a quick recap of how what I did with this process. It has been requested, and I figured I'll show you after the fact instead of during, where it takes significantly longer, a couple of hours to get through and set up. It's not as bad as it used to be. They've made a lot of progress in this area of the game. Now, the early steps could be done pretty much in any order, but the order that I go in is I start with the objectives page, and I start with this one going through it by importance. I ignore the lesser ones. These 1-star ones are not a big deal. I happen to include Asturias as a 2-star objective and Marseille as a 2-star objective, but otherwise, that's my first key is writing these down. And what I end up doing is I use a sticky note. I write down what the objective is, a short version of the name, what category, because finding it later on is going to be important. So what category the race is. I pick the start date. I don't write down the full range, as I just need to know whereabouts in the calendar it is. How important it is definitely a key to what's going on. And that's all but one factor. The last factor is possibly the most important of all, and that is going into each race, seeing the profile, and then jotting down what type of riders I need to bring to the race. For GP de Marseille, I'm writing down puncher, sprinter. And that's exactly what we found there. I needed some guys that could handle the hills, the undulation that we were going to encounter, and knowing that it was going to come down to a sprint in the end. And it did, except for the part about the breakaway hanging on, which was why. And it was suggested in the comments numerous times before I picked up on it and was like, you know what? I should probably do that. More and more often, getting a rider into the breakaway is key, as we see more and more breaks winning, hanging on this year than we have in years prior. Now, last year's edition of the game, they said that they were trying to set that up. They didn't quite figure it out. This year they have. In real life, we see breakaways over the last couple of years win more frequently, so they adjusted the game a little bit to mimic what was going on in real life. It took them 2 years to figure it out and get it right, but they absolutely have this year. Breakaways win more frequently, so having a rider in the breakaway is key. That pause, that back and forth, the frustration of I might have been able to win with Mollebron, I might have been able to win with the sprint because I'm trying to focus on two things at once, and that back and forth and trying to do it real time and not pause as much, that part's frustrating. But either way, we did achieve the goal, and because we had somebody in the break, it made the difference. We had the top 10 anyway, but we placed much higher thanks to the breakaway. As I'm jotting these down, one additional step that I throw in is I start grouping the objectives based on the calendar. Because if you know anything about objectives in this game, you can't just take every single objective you have on the calendar and take your best rider and give them every single race as an objective. They will die by April. By die, I mean their fatigue will be at 100% and they will have absolutely no chance of recovery, and they will be completely ineffective. They'll have -5s every day. Not literally die, but figuratively. So you have to manage the objectives carefully, and therefore I put little squiggly lines through kind of key dates. So example, Marseille, Saudi Arabia, and Oman are all within 2 weeks of each other. They are grouped together, and then I got a little squiggly line. Serimana comes more than a month after. It's a different period. It's a different stretch. These objectives can't overlap, but those first 3 can. The same 7 guys that I just took to Marseille are going to race at Saudi Arabia and Oman. Now, 2 weeks is a bit of a stretch. You want them to be within about a week to 10 days of each other. 16 days apart, that's pushing it a little bit, but with the size of our team, okay, whatever. You got to do what you got to do, especially with that 2 pro one at the end. But Sedimana definitely falls into a different period. But it's also the only one in that period that matters, because we are quickly pushing on to Asturias before we get to the next 2-star, and that's more than a month later. Also, in its own stretch. So I've got my little squiggly lines in between each of those. And then we get down to a set that can fall in together, Mercator and Slovenia, a couple weeks apart. Similar profile, big climbing involved in both, means same riders going to both races, carrying double objectives. And then Österreich Tour, while not much later, that few weeks, separated by the 2 more important objectives, the bigger objective being Slovenia, but then Mercator, because of the climbing profile versus the punch and sprint profile, meaning these 2 pair together, this one ends up as a separate category. This step not being as important as it used to be, with improvements on the planner compared to what it used to be set up as, has kind of combined some of the ideals of what I do here and replaces it on another screen. So this one becomes less and less important. But anyway, what I used to do on a regular basis here is I'll go in and I'll organize by mountain rating, and I'm going to jot down my best climbers, the guys that are elite compared to the rest of the team. I'm going to write down my best punchers, my best time trialist specialists, my best classics guys, my best sprinters, and then I usually will then go in and figure out who has not been in any of those categories, who has not been one of those best climbers that got jotted down, who's not been a best sprinter, who's not been a best classics rider, and means who's my domestiques. And then from that group, I'm going to look at who has the best potential, because I want to get them into an extra race here and there when possible. So knowing who my favorite domestiques are is the last step of that part. But like I said, now the planner is much better. Sorry, the objectives tab is much better, not the planner itself. The objectives tab is much improved. It got a redesign this year. For one thing, it's broken up into 4 categories now. It splits up a little bit more than what it used to in the past. And from here, I'm going to go only by my key objectives, all those ones that I wrote down, those 2 stars or higher objectives, and I'm going to assign who I can, which doesn't always include everybody. Sometimes you're getting 3 or 4 riders and that's it, but at least you're getting 3 or 4 riders prepped for an objective. But here, I was pretty successful at getting all the guys that I needed. So I'm going to find like the Marseille race. So I go into something like the Marseille and Saudi Arabia and Oman race, and I first organize by mountain rating and get the best guys that I could. I knew that there was going to be a combination of climbing and sprinting. So you want to have your sprinter, you want to have your first lead out rider. Sometimes you'll want to have that second lead out rider. So that's maximum 3 sprinters and then 4 best climbers to protect those guys and get them through and set them up, or best punchers, depending on what the profile is that you're going for. But regardless, I end up taking the 4 best climbers, and because you could organize by mountain now, and this is the new feature that kind of takes that away, right? I don't need that sticky note to know who my best guys are in a discipline. I can use this to figure it out. Got my best punchers, I've got my best sprinters, and so you could see how I've got my top guys, and that's why we put Molebron in the break, because he wasn't our best climber. He was one of the weaker support climbers, but he could handle the climbs well enough. I didn't want to take my sprinters out of the bunch, but he was the next best outside of those key guys. And that's why we put him up there, and he was capable. And that's why when that group did survive, he was able to get that podium. But I picked my 7 best for the race. select here, select their names here, and then copy it over. And it sets it up really easy. But the thing you've got to be careful of when you're setting this up is limiting what can happen over a stretch. These 3 objectives are back to back. This team that I'm taking to Serimana, a lot of these guys would be there, but the timing's not right. So to get the objective, to get that plus 3, 4, 5 out of these guys, I think is more useful to bring a different team to Serimana than what we had for these 3 races. We have enough depth now that it's easier to bring different riders to different races and still find a way to succeed. But throwing objectives in for all of the guys that are there, Roteus here getting, his first go, he's a time trialist, but Serimana included a time trial and punchy. So you can see, he's a little bit punchy. 64 is not great at all. It's really bad, but for us, it's still kind of what we're working with. But getting the Shimway, who's got the combination for the time trial, it's a team time trial, and can climb a bit, means we have a chance to maybe not win a stage at that race, but maybe we do really well in the team time trial. That's where we did awful a year ago, by the way. But if we could do well in the team time trial this time around, maybe we can place high in the GC and offset not getting the stage win. Now, once you've gone through and set objectives, if you already have your team, if you have your 7 riders all within objective, this part becomes really easy. You move over to the planner and then do this right at the start of the year, which you can update it as the season goes on, but it's good to set those objectives early. But you can go right in and it's going to give you the green line where they have the objectives, and then just copy down, and you quickly have your team set for the key races, and then the auto planning assistant, the AI planner, will end up filling in the rest month by month, and it'll see how overworked these guys are compared to the other guys. You see, Reteus here's only got 14 days, Kareem's only got 11 days, and therefore they're going to fill in more of these races to balance the schedule, the ones that don't matter as much. So they'll still get their experience, they'll still get their development, and the key races with the key guys have Fitness Peaks objectives, and I've got the right riders, the strongest team that I can put into those key races. That's how I set my season up. That is going to do it for this episode, though. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.